So, Fionn, you've been working on a little indie game, which I've been playing several hours of.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's Parks Unknown. And I would like to give you the floor just to kind of talk about anything you want about it, the how you came up with the idea, what your goals are, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so myself and a friend of mine, Oscar, I'll link his Twitter and we can put it in the show notes. But
Sure.
we were
absolutely.
thinking about genres that we like and different ways to combine those. And we're just spitballing ideas for a while, which it's just something that the two of us do a lot. And then we were thinking about, what if there was something that combines a roguelike in the style of like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon with sort of like a zoo building game like Zoo Tycoon or one of the Jurassic Park games or something like that, and has this kind of loop where if you go into a dungeon and you look for these kind of fabulous creatures, and then when you capture something, you can bring it back to your zoo and then show it off to, the rest of the world who don't want to go into dungeons to see giant slime monsters in there. You're kind of putting on this menagerie for them. And I don't know, maybe in a couple of days, I put together like a very basic demo. There was one creature in the original version. I can send you a picture of the original version, actually. It's comically simple. There's like little flatworm style creature that's incredibly simple, and it comes in two different colors, and you can capture both of those and you can put them in a zoo that doesn't have any visitors or staff, and everything is either a wall tile or a tile that you can move around, and all the creatures just walk around randomly and bump into each other. And then it's kind of grown from there, and I've just been kind of developing more of it as I go with, this would be a fun mechanic. And then kind of each mechanic leads to, I'll add this new creature to introduce this mechanic, and then the new creature adds another mechanic, and so on. So it's kind of spiraled like upwards into a game that gets kind of more and more fleshed out. And yeah, at the moment it's really kind of picked up into something very exciting where I'm, putting together new bits of it. And I just recently added a kind of a second biome to it that really kind of expands the options for stuff you can do in it. One of the kind of priorities I want to have is all of your kind of staff members in the zoo can be party members in the dungeon exploration. So it's like thinking, okay, like what would a zookeeper's character class be? What would a vet's character class be? And then also thinking about stuff like coming up with new creatures and like what would be a mechanic that would distinguish this one from everything else? And then how do we implement that in a way that sort of shows off its gimmick without it being too, confusing or arcane, or what's the right amount of confusing and arcane? So it's been like a really, really fun set of ideas to work with.
Now, I actually did get to play a little bit of your game as well, and I also found it fascinating, not only on the your concept of zoo meets Pokemon Dungeon. I love the designs too, by the way. It kind of reminded me of Earthbound, like a little bit, like the character design.
I think there's that kind of like a strange flavor to it of everything is like a little bit alien but familiar kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you're building like lore as you're coding with this game. It's really nice to see. I've never been a part of anything like that. I've never actually, done any game design or anything, but it's really nice to see. It's very
it's like if it's something you're interested in, I would fully recommend it. It's really rewarding kind of seeing those things being built up on top of each other. Sometimes it feels a bit like a Jenga tower or something like that, but it's always very exciting, especially with something like this where you end up with a lot of these kind of procedural generation systems where sometimes like things will happen in the game that I didn't know could happen, and those can be really exciting. Like I started programming these kind of ecological interactions that different creatures can have. One of these like events that can happen is if your characters are in a battle with like some enemy creatures as they go around, sometimes the noise will like attract these like little bat creatures who live on the ceiling, and they'll kind of drop down into the fight.
I had that happen in my game.
I
love
also
those
had
little
that
guys.
happen. That you're talking about the drop beast, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the drop beasts are like, and that's the only way to find them. They won't kind of spawn under any normal conditions. But there's another system where there are certain creatures that will go around hunting other creatures that
I've
like
noticed
are
that
their
too.
kind of natural prey. And you can sometimes, you'll go onto a floor and you'll see one of those is kind of like busying about, kind of running around, finishing off all these kind of little prey items. But those systems can actually interact in ways I hadn't expected. So what had happened, I like came into kind of like an area of the dungeon, and this whole scene was playing out where one of these giant birds was running around looking for all these little beetles to eat, and the noise of it attacking one of the beetles had attracted a drop beast, and the drop beast was attacking it. So there was like there was this whole like really complex series of interactions like playing out in front of me from things I hadn't like expected from what I put in. Like it was such an interesting,
wow, that's
and
fascinating.
There's like loads of little things like that have happened where it's these things are kind of developing on their own in some way. It's
you're kind of
like,
building a creeper for Minecraft.
yeah, there's that kind of like emergent sort of thing of like I did not expect these systems to like stack on top of each other like that.
Yeah, wow, that's really fascinating. That's really cool.
I came across, I was in the caves, and I was at a part where I kept dying in the dungeons. I was getting frustrated because I really needed building materials because I only had half a fence. And I came across because I didn't know, like I was afraid of leaving because I had one little pin, but I was running out of room. And I didn't know, like I heard Jeff said he like just releases his guys. So I was like, do they attack the guests? So I was like, do they eat each other? So I was afraid of having anything just running around. And so I kept losing my materials, and I misclicked some things. So I had to get rid of those. And I was like, oh man, I wish it would give me the resources back. But anyways, I went into the cave and I came across this little like 4-way cave. Like it just had enough room. It looked like a D-pad, like this little cave room looked like a D-pad on a controller, and inside it was an egg in the middle and 4 of those gray evil looking ostrich things around it. I was like, I am not messing around with them. So I was like, yeah, we're gonna go to the next level, because it was like that was the last of the monsters on that level I came across. It's like, oh, I want that egg, but I am not messing with those big gray birds. They looked angry there, and I went near it, and like they started charging me. I was like, nope, we're going upstairs.
Oh, I started getting that strategy down day one. I put my builder up front, and then I had the vet in the back. I forget which one is the purple one.
That's the catcher, I think.
That's the cat. Oh yeah, that's the catcher. Yeah, so I was just going around with the builder up front, and then like as the builder got the health depleted, I would just switch over to the next character and just beat on everything. And I ended up catching a targ. So I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know if that's rare or not, but I was like, yeah, I caught a targ.
They're really difficult to capture because of their combat mechanic is that they're immune to attacks from the front, so but they also turn around really slowly, so they're kind of one of those positioning based enemies that I find quite fun in games where there's kind of if you can sneak up behind it, you can get past its shield.
That's how I encountered the drop beast for the first time, because the drop beast had come down while the targ was like beating on something else, and they were like caught in a fight, so I got a lot of swings behind them. And that was another thing as well that happened when those drop beasts started spawning in situations I didn't expect, is that they often spawn in behind other creatures, so they'll get surprise attacks on them, which if the creature survives it, that can be really good for you, because that can actually like make it like weak enough to capture really quickly. Nice.
That reminds me of another thing with the like you were saying with the nests. That's another thing that started as where I was implementing one system, and then more things started to emerge. There was a function where the chance for any creature or any nest to be like surrounded by others of its species would be dependent on the creature's rarity. But because the kraken, the little lobster creatures, have the lowest possible rarity, they would always spawn. And I was thinking, okay, it always happens that if there's a nest of one of those creatures, there'll be 4, which is the maximum possible number of guardians around it, which doesn't really make a ton of sense. These are just simple little lobster creatures. So I kind of rewrote them to be like ants that live in these kind of colonies. So anytime there's a clutch of them, they have this worker caste that defends it, and then the eggs can hatch into queens of that species, which are the only ones able to lay more. So it's elements inspired by systems that kind of evolved from the gameplay.
I did read on that.
It feels like kind of observing creatures, taking notes on them, and then being like, okay, how do I like logic this behavior that they do into their like narrative function?
Right. Yeah. I did actually see the croc, and I ended up capturing one of those as well. And I read that it's one of the only species that breeds or whatever. I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's a fun way to play around with those kind of mechanics for like a really basic enemy, because in other ways it's the enemy that you could learn like the basics of combat against and that kind of thing. So having it have a particularly like unusual way of using the other mechanics, the way to fight it, that's really simple, but the way to breed it is like a really complicated whole system of its own, is a way to kind of shake up the tutorial enemy kind of idea of it.
Yeah, that's breeding is something I haven't got a handle on yet. I don't know how to make it happen, but I do really enjoy being able to like build my own zoo and everything. Even though it's like so simple right now, I can see so much happening as this develops. I'm excited for what could be.
I'm always kind of having ideas of like, this might be the time to put in this big thing I've been thinking of, you know, that kind of thing of like, you know what, I think it's time to add the next character class, or like that kind of thing where something will come up and I'm like, I think this problem would be solved if I do this big thing I've been thinking of for a while. That like just recently I was kind of thinking, okay, like I need to work out how the economics of this works with the kind of money coming in and money going out system of it works, which at the moment is all over the place. But that's one thing I don't particularly mind, because I've never played a zoo game where it wasn't all over the place anyway.
Yeah, true.
So I felt that was fairly authentic. I don't know if that's how real zoos are run, but I can only hope not. But I was like, this is the time. I'm going to give all of the guests their favorite species. And like that has been like what I've been doing lately, and that's been really fun. I've just like, I want the guests who appear to have individual preferences of like, oh yeah, I want to see a baby animal today, or that kind of thing.
And that is so realistic too. I mean, a lot of people, when they go to the zoo, they've seen everything, but a lot of people go for like to see one specific animal, gorilla, penguin,
they
whatever.
have something in mind. They're like, okay, I'm going to go to the zoo. I'm going to see the pandas. Like, I'm gonna see
exactly.
The zebras, and then I'm going to go home.
Gotta check out my favorite panda. Make sure it's still
or it's like, well, I'm going to go to the zoo, and I might not get time to go to all of the houses because they close early and there's a lot to see in them. So I'm going to start with this one because it's got the important stuff.
Exactly.
And if I have extra time and I'm not too tired, I'll go to this one. Like I want that kind of effect to eventually kind of work in it, of like people kind of planning their own trips to it almost.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, and I'm really excited for like what this game is going to become. Because I'm sure, like you said, you're adding little things all the time, and there's so much potential there. It's like I can imagine that this sort of like monster zoo thing might have been done before, but I can't think of anything. So like this is still like a super. It's like it's too good of an idea for it not to have been done at some point. But
yeah, I think the closest things I could think of are like some of the like Jurassic Park games and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I was just about to bring up Zoo Tycoon, but it's completely different.
Those are real animals, though. This is like you're learning along, like you're leading all these experts into the field to collect animals, and you yourself have no idea what's going on. Like, oh my god, what is that? I want that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to have that almost like a level of reality to it, that like when you see a creature you can kind of work out like how it works to some degree. That's one of those things that some games like Monster Hunter do really well, where you kind of have some level of almost realism to it, where you can be like, oh yeah, these are fantasy creatures, but they're very well thought out, that you can see a thing, and when it does something weird, you can work out why.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's nothing as weird as the kind of I don't know, like the Final Fantasy VII Hell House, that kind of thing, where it's oh my god, it's a house that can shoot bombs at me, and that's a creature. Oh dear.
Oh yeah. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, where there's that kind of thing where it's completely unpredictable, but having kind of things that are unfamiliar but work by like familiar rules is kind of useful in this situation, where you have to kind of think about them like, if this creature has needs like a normal creature, in that it wants food, water, it wants, others of its kind, it wants like a bed, that kind of thing. You can kind of you can have that kind of level of slight realism to it, where it's like,
Mhm.
you know, these are fantasy creatures, but they need to be looked after like real creatures do, kind of.
So one thing that I really liked about the experience of playtesting for this game, by the way, are you still looking for playtesters?
Yeah, I suppose so. Actually, yeah, that'll be like something I'll probably keep needing more people for at different stages, even just to have like fresh eyes on different parts of it.
Right, yeah. And so in that case, I'll try to make a link in the description or a post to let them know how to reach out to you if they want to play test.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one
That'd be
thing
great.
I've never done playtesting before, but I found it really amazing how you were so like receptive to critiques and ideas and all that kind of stuff. Because I didn't want to like overstep my bound. Like I don't want to like insult them. Like, but I also feel like I need to mention it because that's my job right now is playtesting this to see what
Yeah,
I like,
no,
don't
exactly,
like, what
yeah.
works, doesn't work. So like while I was playing, I had a Google Doc open and I would just like I would type out things that I noticed or things that felt kind of off or just to me as a me as an individual player.
Well,
And
now
so I
that
was
you
like-
bring it up,
Yeah, I had a
so
whole
all these things
page.
I hate about this. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Start
that
over.
is one of those things. It's a really helpful habit to get into, and like it's something I always do as well, of identifying my own points of friction with it when I'm playtesting it myself, being like, what are the things I regard as a chore, and then maybe I should take those out, you know, that kind
Right.
of thing. Like, what am I putting in the things that I make little kind of cheat codes for myself that I can use to like skip bits of a
Oh,
particular
he's got the
section, and
cheat
I'm
codes,
like,
guys.
well, maybe I should just take that bit. Yeah, if I'm doing that, maybe I should just take that bit out because it's obviously not working that well if I have to skip it every time myself. So like, there's that kind of thing as well. Of things that are troublesome for one person are like, not always, but usually are troublesome for everyone.
Right.
So that kind of thing can be really helpful to identify as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a really fun experience trying out your game. This was like same thing as James said. This is my first time, play testing anything, and I'm actually really thankful that I got to try out your game. It's really fresh. It's a cool idea, and
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really fun, like having people test it and field ideas and stuff. Like that's been really great, and like it's really illuminating as well. It's great to have feedback and ideas on kind of like, oh, do you reckon we could push this system a bit more? And that is the exact kind of thrust that gives me that kind of click of like, oh yeah, maybe it is time to implement this system,
Yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of
right.
thing of like, there are all these things where it's like, oh, now we can start adding the tactics in and that kind of thing, and now we can start adding the new biomes and all these different complexities and things like that.
Yeah.
While I was doing my little notes, and playing the game, me as a creative, I naturally had my own ideas, and I was like, "Oh man, what if this was in the game? That would be so cool if this happened." And as I was typing my notes, I'm like, "Don't put that in. It's not your game. Don't be adding stuff." And then at the end, I was like, "I'm gonna put it in here because I'm me, and they can just disregard it if they want. I don't care, but I have to say it." And I put that little note in there, like, "You can ignore this if you want, but I can't not put this in here." So. But you were like so receptive. You're like, "Oh, I've actually been thinking about a lot of these ideas already, so it's cool you brought it up." I'm like,
exactly.
okay,
Like all of those are really good, and like all of those are like things that are along the lines that I'm thinking, and it's like those are the things that I'm like, this will be a cool system. I can't wait to get around to adding these types of things in as well. A few of those actually were things that were in like very early versions of the game, and then I took them out when I revamped some other stuff. And then there's been a kind of slow process of adding some of those back.
Nice.
For instance, I had a fairly kind of complex system of different like traps and baits that you could use early on in the game.
Yes.
But I had
yes.
to take those out to revamp the combat a bit. But I'm adding those back in now because they are really fun to play around with. And they're a really kind of rewarding way to prep for stuff like in that kind of like Monster Hunter or like Horizon kind of thing of like, we're going to prepare this area for the big monster that's going to come crashing through.
Yeah.
And you know exactly what it's going to take and how you can lure it to somewhere here, and working out what are this creature's weak points. Like maybe it's really defensive but it doesn't have a great attack, or maybe it turns slowly so you can get behind it, or it's easy to like pin it into a corner. All of those kind of tricks to combat can be really kind of fun to consider ahead of time.
Speaking of tricks to combat, this is just a side note that I had in my mind while I was playing. I mean, it's simple enough to switch characters by pressing tab, but I think it would be really cool to have like a little character wheel where if you hold down a certain key, you can just spin it and select the character that you're trying to get up front right away.
Yeah, I do
Like
wanna have,
James said, I don't want to,
rotatable
because you're the
things, and
developer, and I'm not trying to like tell
No,
you how
yeah,
to
that's-
make your game. But
one of those things as well that goes with that I really want to do at some point, because I always love any game that does this, is have the equivalent of like a summoner or like something like that where you can bring in a monster to help you.
oh yeah, that
It's
would
like-
be cool.
That's one thing that I particularly want to add as like one of the classes later on, and it could be something like a
Got good old
guess
Ash
the-
Ketchum.
Dude, I would,
Yeah,
I would
exactly,
either
yeah,
call it,
kind
I would
of,
call it the tamer or the wrangler.
yeah, or yeah, exactly, and
Those
they
are
could be like the person who gets the creatures to do the sea lion feeding or whatever kind of thing back at the zoo.
Yeah.
Like whoever teaches all the animals to like follow the laser or play with the hoop, or whoever's in charge of all of those kind of things could also be in charge of like bringing them out to dungeons and doing that kind of aspect of the taming or wrangling or whatever they're doing.
Absolutely love talking about how other people's brains work with all kinds of creative processes, and like game design is something I've never been able to talk to anybody about, like who's done it. So this especially has been very cool to talk to you about.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
really cool process. It's one of those very interesting mixes of like art and science and maths kind of stuff. It's a bunch of different types of things that are all over the place that are really fun.
Well, this has all been very cool.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely were a really, really fun like guest to show up. Like of all the people I could have imagined, I did not expect to have so much content like in just one video. You
Right.
Okay, thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you so much, Fionn, for joining us and just sharing all of your knowledge and your art with us. We really appreciate that, and also saving us from drawing in this episode. You really saved us some work.
yeah, it definitely
Having it
did.
done in advance always helps.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll have all of our links will be in the description, Discord, all of our Twitters, including Fionn. Fionn, any other social medias you want us to share, let us know. They'll be down in the description. Please follow them wherever you can. Keep up with their art and their game, and it is a wild ride. That's all I can say. It's a joy, absolute joy.
It was a joy. It was awesome. Thank you
so
for
much.
being a
Anytime,
guest on.
it's
Yeah.
really fun.
And also don't forget to join our Discord. It's down in the description. We currently have a contest going on for missing link Pokemon, as in
Ooh.
drawing some Pokemon line that's missing a form that you think you can fill in, additional evolutions, pre-evolutions, all that counts. It's running through this month, and the winner gets a $20 e-card for Steam, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, whatever you play. $20 for the winner. So we're super excited. We have a great community there. Feel free to check us out there. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. I didn't forget it this time to the last second. So-
Nice.
All right, we'll catch you guys in the next episode.